The grand tour. Jack, Will, Julian, Charlotte, and I went down the big hallway to some wide stairs. No one said a word as they walked up to the third floor. When we got to the top of the stairs, we went down a little hallway full of lots of doors. Julie opened the door marked 301. This is our homeroom, he said, standing in front of the door half open. We have Mrs. Petsoa. They say that she's okay, at least for homeroom. I heard she's really strict if you get her for math, though. That's not true, said Charlotte. My sister had her last year, and she said she was totally nice. Not what I heard, answered Julian, but whatever. He closed the door and continued walking down the hallway. This is the science lab, he said when he got to the next door. And just like that he did 2 seconds ago, he stood in front of the half-open door and started talking. He didn't look at me once while he talked, which was okay because I wasn't looking at him either. You won't know who you have for science until the first day of school, but you want to get Mr. Holler. He used to be in lower school. He would play giant tuba in class. It was a baritone horn, said Charlotte. It was a tuba, answered Julian, closing the door. Dude, let him go inside and check so you can check it out, Jack Will told him, pushing past Julian and opening the door. Go inside if you want, Julian said. It was the first time he looked at me. I shrugged and walked over to the door. Julian moved out of the way quickly, like he was afraid I might accidentally touch him as I passed him by. Nothing much to see, Julian said, walking in after me. He started pointing up to a bunch of stuff around the room. That's the incubator. That's the big black thing on the chalkboard. Is a chalkboard. These are desks. These are chairs. Those are Bunsen burners. This is a gross science poster. This is chalk. This is eraser. I'm sure he knows what an eraser is, Charlotte said, sounding a little like Via. How would I know what he knows, Julian said. Mr. Tushman said he's never been to school before. You know what an eraser is, right? Charlotte asked me. I mean, I was feeling nervous that I didn't know what to say or do or expect. Except look at the floor. Hey, can you talk? Asked Jack Will. Yeah, I nodded. I still really hadn't looked at any of them yet, not directly. You know what an eraser is, right? Asked Jack Will. Of course, I mumbled. I told you there was nothing to see in here, Julian said, shrugging. I have a question, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What exactly is homeroom? Is that like a subject? No, that's just your group, explained Charlotte, ignoring Julian's smirk. It's like where you go to get your, when you get to school in the morning, and your homeroom teacher takes attendance and stuff like that. In a way, it's your main class, even though it's not really a class. I mean, it's class, but I think he gets it, Charlotte, said Jack Will. Do you get it? Charlotte asked. Yeah, I nodded to her. Okay, let's get out of here, said Jack Will, walking away. Wait, Jack, we're supposed to be answering questions, said Charlotte. Jack Will rolled his eyes a little and as he turned around. Do you have any more questions? He asked. No, I answered. Oh, well, actually, yes. Is your name Jack or Jack Will? Jack is my first name, Will is my last name. Oh, because Mr. Tushman introduced you as Jack Will, so I thought, you thought my name was Jack Will, or his name was Jack Will, laughed Julian. Yeah, some people call me by my first and last name, Jack said, shrugging. I don't know why. Anyways, can we go now? Let's go to the performance space next, Charlotte said, leading up the way of the science room. It's very cool. You're going to like it, August. The performance space. Charlotte basically didn't stop talking as we headed down to the second floor. She was describing the play she had put on last year, which was Oliver. She played Oliver, even though she's a girl. As she said this, she pushed open the door to a huge auditorium. At the other end of the room was the stage. Charlotte started skipping towards the stage. Julian ran after her and then turned around halfway down the aisle. Come on, he said loudly, waving for me to follow him, which I did. There were like hundreds of people in the audience that night, said Charlotte. And it took a second for me to realize she was talking about Oliver. I was so nervous. I had so many lines on all the songs to sing. It was so hard. Although she was talking to me, she didn't really look at me much. On opening night, my parents were all the way in the back of the auditorium, like where Jack is right now. But when the lights are off, you can't really see them that far back. So I was like, where are my parents? Where are my parents? And then Mr. Resnick, our theater teacher last year, he said, Charlotte, stop being such a diva. And I was like, okay. And then I spotted my parents, and I was totally fine and didn't forget a single line. While she was talking, I noticed Julian staring at me out of the corner of his eye. This is something I see people do a lot with me. They think I don't know they're staring, but I can tell from the way their head is tilted. I turn around to see where Jack had gone. He had stayed in the back of the auditorium like he was bored. We put on a play every year, said Charlotte. I don't think he's going to want to be in a school play, Charlotte said, Julian sarcastically. You can be in a play without actually being in a play, Charlotte answered, looking at me. You can do the lighting, you can paint backdrops. Oh, yay, whoopee, said Julian, twirling his finger in the air. But you don't have to take on the theater arts elective if you don't want to, Charlotte said, shrugging. There's dance or chorus or band that is leadership. Only dorks take leadership, Julian interrupted. Julian, you're being so obnoxious, said Charlotte, which made Julian laugh. I'm taking the science elective, I said. Cool, said Charlotte. Julian looked at me directly. The science elective is supposedly the hardest elective of all, he said. No offense, but you've never been to school before. Why do you think you suddenly are going to be this smart enough to take the science elective? I mean, have you ever studied science before? Like real science, not the kind you do in kits? Yeah, I nodded. He was homeschooled, Julian, said Charlotte. So teachers came to his house? Asked Julian, looking puzzled. No, my mother taught me, answered No, his mother taught him, answered Charlotte. Is she a teacher? Julian asked. Is your mother a teacher? Charlotte asked. No, I said. So she's not a real teacher, said Julian, as if that proves his point. That's what I mean. How can someone not a real teacher actually teach science? I'm sure you'll do fine, Charlotte said, looking at me. Let's just go to the library now, Jack called out, sounding really bored. Why is your hair so long, Julian said to me. He sounded like he was annoyed. I don't know what to say, so I just shrugged. Can I ask you a question, he said. I shrugged. Didn't he just ask me a question? What's the deal with your face? I mean, were you in a fire or something? Julian, that's so rude, said Charlotte. I'm not being rude, said Julian. I'm just asking a question. Mr. Tushman said we could ask questions if we wanted to. Not rude questions like that, said Charlotte. Besides, he was born like that. That's what Mr. Tushman said. You weren't listening. I was listening, said Julian. I just thought maybe he was in a fire too. Geez, Julian, said Jack. Just be quiet. You be quiet, Julian yelled. Come on, August, said Jack. Let's go to the library already. I walked towards Jack and followed him out of the auditorium. He held the double doors open for me and I passed by. He looked at me right in the face, kind of daring me to look at him back, which I did. Then I actually smiled. I don't know, sometimes when you have a feeling like of almost crying, it can turn into an almost laughing feeling. And that must have been what I was feeling. I was having then, because I smiled and I almost like I was going to giggle. The thing is, because of the way my face is, people who don't know me very well don't always get I'm smiling. My mouth doesn't go up in the corners the way other people's mouths do. It goes straight across my face. But somehow Jack Will got that I had smiled, and he smiled back. Julian's a jerk, he whispered before Julian and Charlotte reached us. But dude, you're gonna have to talk. He said this seriously, like he was trying to help me. I nodded as Julian and Charlotte caught up to ours. We were all quiet for a second, all just kind of nodding, looking at the floor. Then I looked up. The word is supposedly, by the way, I said. What are you talking about? You said supposedly before, I said. I did not. Yeah, you did, Charlotte nodded. You said the science elective is supposedly really hard. I heard you. I absolutely did not, he insisted. Whatever, said Jack. Let's just go. Yeah, let's just go, agreed Charlotte, following Jack down the stairs. The next floor, I started to follow her, but Julian cut right in front of me, which actually made me stumble backwards. Oops, sorry about that, said Julian, but I could tell from the way he looked at me that he wasn't sorry at all. The deal. Mom and Mr. Tushman were talking when we got back to the office. Mrs. Garcia was the first to see us come back, and she started smiling her shiny smile as we all walked in. So, August, what did you think? Did you like what you saw? She asked. Yeah, I nodded, looking over at my mom. Jack, Julian, and Charlotte were standing by the door, not sure where to go or if they were still needed. I wondered what else they had been told about me before they'd met me. Did you see the baby chick? Mom asked. I shook my head. Julian said, are you talking about the baby chickens in science? Those got donated to a farm at the end of the school year. Oh, said Mom, disappointed. But they hatch new ones every year in science, Julian added, so August will be able to see them in the spring. Oh, good, said Mom, eyeing me. They were so cute, August. I wish she wouldn't talk to me like I was a baby in front of other people. So, August, Mr. Tushman said, did these guys show you around enough that you want to see more? I realized I forgot to ask them to show you the gym. Well, we did it anyways, Mr. Tushman, said Julian. Excellent, said Mr. Tushman. And I told you about the school play and some electives, said Charlotte. Oh no, she said suddenly. We forgot to show him the art room. That's okay, said Mr. Tushman. But we can show Tim now, Charlotte offered. Don't we have to pick Thea up soon, I said to Mom. That was our signal for me. That was our signal for my telling Mom if I really wanted to leave. Oh, you're right, said Mom, getting up. I could tell she was pretending to check her time on their watch. I'm sorry, everybody. I lost track of time and we have to go pick up my daughter at her new school. She's taking an unofficial tour today. This part wasn't a lie. That Via was checking out her new school today. That part was the part of the part that was the lie was about us picking up from school, which we weren't. She was coming home with Dad later. Where does she go to school? Mr. Tushman said, getting up. She's starting at Faulkner High School this year. Wow, that's not an easy school to get into. Good for her. Thank you, said Mom, nodding. It'll be a bit of a schlep, though. A train downtown to 86, then crosstown bus all the way to East Side. Takes an hour that way, but that's just 15 minutes drive. It'll be worth it. I know a couple of kids who go to Faulkner, and they love it, said Mr. Tushman. We really should go, Mom, I said, tagging at her pocketbook. We said our goodbyes kind of quickly after that. I think Mr. Tushman was a little surprised that we were leaving so suddenly, and then I wondered if he would blame Jack and Charlotte, even though it was only Julian who made me feel kind of bad. Everyone was really nice. I made sure to tell Mr. Tushman before we left. I look forward to having you as a student, said Mr. Tushman, patting my back. Bye, I said to Jack, Charlotte, and Julian, but I didn't look at them or look up at all until after I left the building.